Okay, we are back. The show is still Poet the Poet, and did I mention our magazine, which is called Medicinal Purposes, available by prescription? It's a fun thing to have, full of poetry and stories and line drawings and Lord knows what. And another entity that we have here who is full of stories and poetry is Daniel Weissbrot, who, as I mentioned earlier, runs a publication called Modern Poetry and Translation. Daniel was born in London, England, not Ontario, and or Kentucky for that matter, and has a fascinating history. He was educated in St. Paul's School in London and went to Cambridge University, which beats any claim that I could make. At Cambridge, you were a history exhibitioner.
Yes.
Now, Daniel, an exhibitioner in New York would get himself arrested on the street if he tried to.
Yeah.
What exactly is a history exhibitioner?
In England too.
Dish that dirt.
But it's a kind of honorific. It's, I presume, a medieval description of a studentship, a scholarship, used only this description at Oxford or Cambridge.
Okay, let's see. It says
one of
here,
the marks that distinguish us from.
It says here, after 6 years in the family textile business, you signed on at the London School of Economics to figure out where the money went. All right, but let's see. Modern Poetry and Translation. You started out with Ted Hughes. How did you two get together?
Well, we met at Cambridge. He was in his last year when I went up there. We met, but I didn't know he was a poet until quite long after. Basically, we were drinking mates.
And then?
And then?
I know, the two of you got bombed and suddenly said, let's start a magazine.
Well, it was almost like that, yes.
Okay. Let's see. You have post-war Russian poetry, published in 1974. Was that yours or an anthology? Or?
It was an anthology. It actually based on my attempts to learn Russian. And I was learning Russian in order to familiarize myself with Russian poetry, particularly post-Stalin poetry. And in the process, I translated lots of poems, and then after a few years, I found I had an anthology.
Okay, you're going to have to help me with some of these names. You've done some other translations. The War is Over, selected poems of Yevgeny Vinokurov.
Vinokurov.
That was close, all right. That's, and Natalia Gorbanevskaya?
Gorbanevskaya.
I got to go to Cambridge.
I didn't learn this at Cambridge.
All right. Oh, all right. All right, then you went to the University of Iowa. I mean, what made you decide on Iowa after London as opposed to Paris or Ashtabula?
Well, there was a program there called the International Writing Program, founded by Paul Engel, who was well known in poetry circles, and he found out about the magazine that I had begun with Ted Hughes, Modern Poetry and Translation, wrote to me, and eventually invited me to come as a member of that program, the International Writing Program.
And well, coincidences never cease. You're also a cross-cultural communications author, and we have Inscription here, which is Daniel's book, and perhaps you'd favor us with a selection from there.
Difficult. These are poems that I was attempting to define my Jewish identity, and I'm now sort of out of that phase, if I can call it a phase. But well, let's see. I'm sorry. You talked about poets shuffling.
We all do it.
Pages,
it's okay, honest.
It's because when you look at the poems you've written, you generally can't find any that you want to read. So it's
by now it's a trademark.
So you do a lot of
show.
shuffling. Now I'll read Inscription. That's the easiest thing. That is the poem, the title poem, and it's okay. I'll just read it. In cherished memory of, lovingly remembered by, deeply mourned, sadly missed, heartbroken. Peace to her dear soul. May her dear soul rest in peace. We eliminate some of these at once, the first to go being peace to her dear soul, though I hope, if there be a soul, or at least that whatever her soul may wish, if souls can, then deeply mourned, sadly missed, and so forth. The time of mourning, after all, passes, so why inscribe it in stone, though stone too passes? But lovingly remembered will do. Remembered, certainly, and lovingly, yes, we can say that now without blanching, though knowing she was not what you'd call lovable. How all this relates to her remains a mystery. The words fetched from here and there for her memorial hide more than they disclose. They're a kind of spell, a formula to keep her whole. but of her they convey to the outside world nothing. Perhaps that's the point. They leave the memory of her untouched. That memory I recall especially her not speaking of all this, or at most obliquely, if something happens to me. Though in another mood, she would almost casually refer to the plot, the arrangement for her interment, and, on our annual pilgrimage, brush down the tomb, tidy around a bit, like someone straightening out the bed before climbing in.
Cheery stuff.
Yes.
Daniel, I must say, how many languages does that poem come in?
Does it? Well, I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, it
that.
isn't very cheery. That's the problem with this book. It is very uncheery.
Okay, well, how about another poem then?
Well, I have no alternative but to find another one here.
Okay.
I'll have a look at...
Do you have any funny tombstone poems in there?
Yeah, yeah. I have a series of poems called The Origins of Death.
Okay.
Well, okay, I'll read the first one because it's short. When God created life, he created death too. But seeing what a good time was being had by all, he hadn't the heart to let it loose. Instead, he visited people with boils and sores, with the plague, which would have carried them off wholesale, with domestic strife, which drove many to the brink, until they cried out, "Lord, Lord, relieve our suffering." Whereupon God sent death to them in answer to their prayers.
God is a great sport, let me tell you. Karen, jumping back to you for a second, how do you think Daniel here would go over at the University of the Negev?
Oh, I haven't been in the University of the Negev for many years, but I think that I think that Daniel, first of all, is very well known in Israel.
Ah.
He has translated and has edited a number of editions of modern poetry in translation with a lot of Israeli poets, making us thereby international. And so he would go over very well.
Speaking of international, I want to slip one of yours in while nobody's looking. Actually, people are looking, but slip one in anyway.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to slip one in? Okay.
That's your
There's
cue.
a poem
Yeah,
called... Okay. There's a poem called Una Selva. My version of Dante. Una Selva. Here, in this dark, sweet forest, I learned the motions of the axe. Stretching back and leaning into the timber, the separate grasp of two hands on the helve, sliding together as the blade bites the heart, releasing aroma of inner wood. Then the rhythm of repetition. It is the most powerful lesson of them all. Over and over, the body eats even the hardest forest.
There you go. That's exactly the point I wanted to make.
I wanted to end this on a happy note.
Yes, thank you, Karen. But we're not through yet because we bounced back to Daniel again. I was hoping you had a poem about religious personages water skiing in Iowa. Perhaps Wall Lake or Storm Lake or something like that?
Yeah, no, I've never been to Storm Lake. It's on the far western extremes of Iowa.
Tell us about modern poetry and translation. What's your mission?
The mission was to build little bridges between contemporary writers, contemporary poets. Initially, the mission was really to provide a platform, particularly for poets from Eastern Europe. We began in the 60s, when everything was opening up.
Do you have any amusing translation stories?
Translation stories, oh my God.
Say no more.
It's a dead serious business.
That's good. That's good enough right there. How about another poem?
Okay, this is not funny, but still, it's
all right.
This is about Yiddish, which I never learned.
They don't all have to be funny. It's just
yeah, okay, if I can find it, let me find it. I should have made it.
It's in there somewhere.
It's in there somewhere.
What's it called? I'll help you look.
It's called Yiddish. It's called Yiddish.
Okay.
Okay, Yiddish. I shouldn't have said what it's called. It's more like a riddle.
Okay.
It almost happened. She was there, I was there, and I knew how to do it. But somehow she was not looking in the right direction. And somehow I waited too long. And somehow, when it came to it, I wasn't really sure I knew. And somehow she didn't seem to realize I was there even. And then I fell into a reverie. And meanwhile she vanished. And actually, I didn't know enough in any case. Yiddish is harder than that.
It certainly is. Daniel, do you do a lot of foreign scouting trips?
Foreign what?
Scouting trips. When you travel the world, do you look for poets, or do they come to you?
No, not
naturally?
really. No, I don't look for them. They come.
If you build the magazine, they will come.
They will come, yes.
The paraphrase
Yes.
a famous movie that made the rounds a while back. All right. Well, let's see if we can slip another one in, because that's you.
Oh, me?
Yeah, you. All right.
Oh, best poems here are the photographs of my parents, which are in this book.
Maybe we can hold them up.
It'd be hard to see because there's a very
Second
pale,
round.
very old photographs from Łódź
Yes.
and from Poland and from Brussels. Well, okay, let's see. Okay. Oh God, I'm trying to find
Name
something which
dropper.
won't depress you too much. Okay, here's one called Free. These are difficult, they're elusive. It's basically my mother, my father talking to my mother. Okay.
Yeah.
Let him play, Rachel, he said. Let him play. He was happy to see his own child play, who himself had played so little. My cries, my laughter. At last he felt he had achieved something. Yes, he wanted me to be free, and I nearly was.
I wonder what sort of game you were playing that would enable you to be nearly free like that.
Well, my father was a very serious man, but he wanted me to enjoy life. Can't say that I exactly followed his instructions, but anyway.
Well, you're enjoying this, aren't
Enjoying
you?
this, yes.
There we go. Do you have any secret unfulfilled literary ambitions?
To fulfill my literary ambitions.
Oh,
yes,
I
I
see.
have various projects which I hope to fulfill, yeah.
Anything good?
Well, I'm finishing the translation of a major Russian poet, Nikolai Zabolotski, whom nobody has heard of over here, but a major poet on the level of Akhmatova and so forth.
Zavaleski was?
Zabolotsky, Nikolai Zabolotsky.
And what does he do for a living?
He's dead.
Oh.
I'm sorry. It's not my fault.
But before he got promoted, what did he do? Did he
He
write
wrote poetry.
for a living?
He translated as well.
Son of a gun. There must be
In Russia, you could. It was possible.
There must be something we're missing here if we're not doing this for a living. Maybe another poem.
Another poem.
Sure.
My God.
Well, Karen, don't you want to hear another poem?
Yes.
Well, there you
Find
are.
anything
then.
that is comprehensible. Okay.
The
All right.
Yeah.
second time around?
Gosh. Well, let me see. Okay, I'll read this. This is. No, it's
Read The Rock. That looks nice.
The Rock. All right, The Rock. It's about family.
Yeah.
It's rather long. Well, it's not all that long. The original family rock is 3 parts restored. It fits together. You can almost hear August. You asked for another cemetery poem. On your own head be it. I remember the hot times best. When you died, it was hot. We walked stiffly, stopped before your slab. Each year I try to shape a prayer to think of you. Suddenly I want to shout like a child. Then that impulse too is gone. At last she stoops, places a pebble on the slab. We follow suit. She turns, we turn, and, heads bowed solemnly, leave you to yourself. Returning to the car, absently we read other inscriptions as we pass, remark philosophically how the dead are increased. In the back seat, she who has convened us slumps, conserving herself. In front, we loosen our collars, remove our couples. I start the car. The rock is sundered.
And upon this rock I shall found my poetry magazine. Well, Daniel Weissbrot, I want to thank you for coming on,
Thank you.
Poet the Poet, and best of luck with modern poetry and translation. And
Thank you.
Karen Alkalay-Gut, I want to thank you too for coming on, and I want to slip something else if I can. A little thing or two. This is called Punk Jam. My favorite punk cassette jams in my car deck during rush hour. The tape shreds as I extract it, and suddenly I remember all the words. All right, easy there. The staff is going crazy, so once again, thank you, Karen, thank you, Daniel, and until next time, this is Robert Dunn for Poet the Poet saying, hey, what happened?